go. I think for those who are not hard of hearing, they were able to hear me perfectly well, Mr. Dr. Delegate. So okay, there we go. Okay, so we are going to begin with a briefing from the Department of Agriculture, and we're going to have a briefing on the state of agriculture. And if the public hearing goes late, if the briefing goes more than an hour, we're going to need an additional, how much time to set up for the public hearing, the briefing? Yeah, so if the briefing ends in under an hour, we're still going to start the public hearing at 2 o'clock. So there we go. So we are joined now by Kevin Addix, who is the new acting secretary of the Department of Agriculture. Come up here and grow and fortify your agency. For the freshman, he was the head of Grow and Fortify, so hence the joke. Yes, Kevin, welcome back to the committee, and congratulations.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, esteemed members of the committee. Very excited to be back in front of this committee with a different hat on, same tie, but different hat. And we've got a wonderful agency to speak about today, and an incredible industry to speak about today. Myself, Deputy Secretary Connolly, Assistant Secretaries Hans Schmidt and Kevin Conroy will be providing a brief overview as we go through the slides. First up, just a quick overview about agriculture in Maryland. We have over 12,300 farms spread throughout the state. And that's in just about every jurisdiction in the state. Farms do not look necessarily the way that we think they used to look. They've changed. We have 2 million acres. The average farm size is 165 acres. In terms of dollars, the industry is overall an $8.25 billion industry with $3 billion value add. And when you talk about those numbers, we're not just talking about what you think of as the traditional farm. This now includes urban agriculture. This includes value-added agriculture. This includes creameries, farm breweries, the ice cream trail. That's what's so exciting about agriculture is it is not stagnant. It does not stay in one place. It is the state's #1 industry. And that's a very, very important fact. Of all of the amazing things that occur in Maryland, agriculture is the #1 by dollar amount industry in the state. And it's all of the diverse elements that we just talked about. Maryland Department of Agriculture's vision, you can read it up here. We do so many different things, and you'll hear about those today. Promote profitable agriculture and consumer confidence are the two primary things that we do. Included in that, protecting agriculture and natural resources. If you think about the state of Maryland and the state of agriculture in Maryland, Maryland is unique. There is no other state in the union that is surrounded by our features. No other state has mountains in the west and beaches in the east and the estuary. So we're in a very unique position. And unlike other states, Maryland is extremely conscious of the environment and of the impacts on the environment, much more so than our neighboring states. And so we are truly a leader in that. And you'll hear about some of those programs as we go forward. Department of Ag houses a number of programs that have an impact on consumers' everyday life. Featured on this slide are include these programs, and the print is fine, but you'll notice the top level: marketing, animal industries, and consumer services. Included in that are agricultural marketing, including the Maryland's Best program, which you will see in grocery stores, and there's a great finder on our website about how to find local farms, and you can search by pick your own and blackberries and find the farm that has blackberries. The Horse Industry Board, Food Quality Assurance, the Maryland Agricultural Fair Board, Weights and Measures, the State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, We moved to plant industries and pest management. You'll hear about that. It involves turf and seed. It involves a little entity that we've talked about in this committee in the past few years known as the spotted lanternfly. Our agency is at the forefront of the research on that and managing these pests, mosquito control, midges.
And you're going to get rid of them in the next month or so, right?
With all the appropriate funding and the correct legislation, absolutely.
Correct answer.
If we could make that deal, that would make this presentation go a lot smoother. Resource conservation is one that we're extremely passionate about. Think about resource conservation in terms of conservation grants, nutrient management, making sure that we are limiting and eliminating runoff, making sure that cover crop programs are in place, making sure that, and some of the other programs here, the one at the very end I'll jump to, Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, that's preserving farms. We know that once a farm is in trouble, once there's not a new generation, the farm is sold. The farm never comes back to farmland. It becomes a big box store, it becomes a condo, it becomes a housing development. None of those are a better option for the environment than a farm. None of those are a better alternative to a farm for neighbors. The farm is the best option we have. And so my goal will be, and you'll hear from my peers at the agency, the goal is to make farms profitable, keep farms profitable, and nudge them where we need to, support them where we need to do all the other things that we need and want farms to do. But there are times when we need to buy the farm to keep that farm. And so preservation programs like the Maryland Ag Land Preservation Program and the many others, county and state-run programs, are critical as kind of an integrated part of agriculture. With that, I will turn it over to Steve Connolly, Deputy Secretary of MDA, to talk about the Office of Marketing, Animal Health, and Consumer Services.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually wearing two hats today. I'm deputy, but also I'm acting for our Assistant Secretary for Marketing, Animal Industries, and Consumer Services, Cassie Shirk. She had a baby last week, so she, I guess, gets out of this today. So
Good excuse.
good excuse. So, Jess, could you? I just want to talk about two things that have really taken a great deal of our time this past year. Number one is high-path avian influenza. It's a highly contagious, very deadly airborne virus that affects poultry and some wild birds, such as black-headed vultures and bald eagles, and it's been present across the country in 47 states. We had an outbreak beginning of February last year in Warwick, Maryland. It was a large egg-laying operation. We have an agreement with U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Delaware Department of Agriculture where we work cooperatively to address avian influenza outbreaks. And since that time, there was a broiler farm on the Eastern Shore in Sudlersville that also came down with high-path avian influenza. And most recently in Hagerstown, we had a table egg breeder operation that was infected. The virus is in the migratory waterfowl population. The epidemiologists at USDA are convinced that that's how it's being transmitted. And, you know, our poultry farmers have done a great job on biosecurity, but this is really a difficult disease to stop in its tracks because it's airborne, and it can, if you have an infected duck flying over, and it can get into the ventilation fans, and that's how you'd get an infection. So we've worked very hard to stop and control the disease. It's actually been in 47 states. It's in every flyway in the U.S. Just this week, there's an outbreak near Harrisonburg, Virginia, in their poultry industry. So we know it's a major threat this year with the migratory bird population as they move north to go to the breeding grounds in Canada. And we'll continue to have surveillance and working with our poultry industry to make sure that we do the proper testing to make sure that we protect the poultry industry as best we can. I know that one issue that has come up is the price of eggs, and does this impact really, does the high-path avian influenza have an impact on eggs? And it certainly does. When a poultry flock is depopulated, for egg layers, it takes a year and a half to 2 years to get back to full production because of the age of the birds that have to go back, as well as you don't put all the birds in a house at one time. You have to kind of stagger them in so that you have a steady supply of eggs. So to get back to normal with a egg laying operation, it takes more time than for a breeder farm or broiler farm. And if we move on to the next one, and our Maryland's Best program, we've been doing some promotions, promoting our farmers and watermen. We do the Maryland's Best program to identify products that are produced and grown here in Maryland. The Maryland's Best Seafood program, where we're really trying to promote the seafood products that come out of the Chesapeake Bay, including blue catfish. Delegate Jacobs. We just had our 2023 Buyer-Grower Expo at the Naval Academy. We had the largest number of vendors we've ever had. I think people were really excited after the COVID lockdowns to come out and to support their local producers. We will have Delegate Jacobs. We're receiving some funds from USDA to do a blue catfish purchasing initiative through the Maryland Food Bank and the Capital Area Food Bank, along with other local produce. And the blue catfish has been our most important focus for seafood marketing in the past few years. It's, as many have probably already heard us talk about it before, it is a non-native species that is kind of wreaking havoc in parts of the bay, eating up all our native fish.
It also happens to be delicious.
It is delicious. And I think actually with the committee, about 3 or 4 years ago, we did a tasting with you.
Yes, you did. I think the new members of the committee need to have that done again, you know. Fish tacos, yeah.
Can I have a motion?
All those in favor,
Second.
signify by saying aye.
So
Opposed, no.
moved.
The
Okay,
ayes seem to
great.
have it. The ayes have it. It's
You give us a
unanimous.
date, we'll bring it.
Okay. And I understand snakehead fish are good eating too, so. Yeah, okay. We have so much to learn.
Well, we want to share that
Okay.
with you.
Okay,
And we also have kicked off the Certified Local Farm Enterprise Program. That's to really encourage more purchase of Maryland farm products by state institutions. It's going to be a growing program. We have 69 farms signed up for the Certified Farm Program, and we're adding new farms every day and hope to have many more in the near future.
okay, terrific. Who's next?
Okay. Yep. Got Kevin Conroy coming up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Conroy, Assistant Secretary of Plant Energy's Pest Management. I just wanted to briefly update you our battle with spotted lanternfly. For the members that are new to the committee, we've had spotted lanternfly in the state for the past 7 years. We first detected it in Cecil County. It is a great hitchhiker. That's how it has been spreading throughout the state. And as the populations have been taking hold, we've been, unfortunately, the populations are growing. As when we first came along, we were very worried about a number of crops to really be decimated by this bug, but it's been mainly working on the fruit, stone fruits, grape industry. That's where the biggest concern is that we've discovered these last few years. But when the bug does stick to a crop, it secretes a sugary mildew, blackens the fruit, the plant. It can destroy a crop very quickly. It's unsightly. It's a nuisance. More and more places in the state are starting to see it. As you'll see, I think next slide. Yeah, it's almost in every county now. As you see here, the areas in red is where it's infested. We are looking to add a few more counties to our quarantine. Mostly, again, out west in southern Maryland, the only places we haven't had any detects yet. We found a few dead ones, but we haven't found any colonies. So again, we found them on vehicles. A lot of people, we actually have had a great education program about this and trying to get the word out. The number of people going to our website to self-report these has exponentially grown these last few years. So we have a great team of 9 staff as currently that gets out there that is doing, right now they're doing monitoring. We do traps throughout the year. When we start doing, we're doing trapping and treatment once it's above 40 degrees. So as long as the weather stays warm, we can try to get ahead of this for the spring. Sorry. And you can see here the reporting has grown exponentially these last few years. From 2021, we had about 6,000 reports to almost 12,000 in a year. So unfortunately, it's something we're going to have to learn to live with. Right now, we are asking from our feds for double the money that we received this year. We've got about $600,000. This is a completely federally funded program. We're asking for about just shy of $1.2 million. Problem with our federal funding is that the bug has been moving to other states. They found it in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, New Hampshire, as far south as North Carolina. So we're hoping in the 23 Farm Bill that there'll be more money for this kind of effort. But the pot remains pretty stagnant, and more states are coming asking. So, but luckily our friends from the feds have been giving us more and more money every year. But at a certain point, unless the feds really step up, and there was an effort to double the funding last year which failed. But we're using our funds as best as possible, and we are doing treatments besides just the trapping and monitoring. So, and that's kind of the update.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Next up, I want to bring up Assistant Secretary Hans Schmidt to talk about resource conservation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. Pleasure to be here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Office of Resource Conservation, what we do, and the progress that we've been making over these last year and so. The Office of Resource Conservation, we work with Maryland farmers to balance crop and livestock production to ensure that we're protecting our natural resources. Our responsibilities fall really under 4 major programs. Our nutrient management program, which helps ensure that farmers are applying fertilizers, manures, other types of nutrients in an environmentally sound manner. Our conservation grants program helps farmers finance water quality projects on their farms. Our district operations helps provide resources, staffing, and operation funds to help fund 24 soil conservation districts across the state. And these districts help deliver these programs, these conservation programs, both state and federal programs. And then finally, program planning and evaluation, which helps develop new programs, oversees our Chesapeake Bay progress reporting, administers the Animal Waste Technology Fund, and our Healthy Soil program. So 3 key priorities actually drive our strategic plan. One is we have ramped up our efforts for Chesapeake Bay restoration to meet our 2025 restoration goals. We've done this by we've upped 100% cost share for more than 20 high priority permanent conservation practices on our farms. We've ensured the full implementation of the phosphorus management tool. And I want to recognize Delegate Stewart for his leadership on that committee, as well as I also want to recognize Delegate Jacobs and Delegate Otta, who have served on our nutrient management committee, advisory committees. Those committees help the department and give recommendations to the department as we try to improve those programs. It is a regulatory program, so recommendations on how we can administer, making sure that it's a program that farmers can work with, but also that we're ensuring that we are meeting our water quality goals. And we've also secured 53 new technical positions out in the soil conservation districts. And as I said, those districts help to deliver our conservation programs. At one time, before I had this position, I served on the National Association of Conservation Districts. And listening to how other states administer or develop the framework for their districts, Maryland is very unique. And what is unique about it, it's the partnership between the state, the federal agencies, and the local jurisdictions to pull the resources together to help the needs of the local counties. And it's those local counties has a board of supervisors, and they develop a work plan, and those work plans help to deliver local resource concerns. And so they can provide, the leadership to the districts to help utilize those resources. And those technical positions help us as an overall state, help Maryland to meet our goals. This is how Maryland has been so successful into reaching our goals. Maryland agriculture is far ahead of any other state within the Chesapeake Bay watershed as far as meeting our water quality goals. And a lot of tribute goes to our farmers who voluntarily come into the districts, who want to put these practices on the ground. You have to understand they're very expensive practices. They take a lot of technical expertise to design these practices, but they do it on a volunteer basis. And a lot of credit to the farmers, a lot of credit to our soil conservation districts, and just Maryland in general for working with all our various different partners to meet our goals. Second, the office has integrated climate-smart farming practices into our conservation agenda. We've done that first by developing the Healthy Soil Program, and I want to thank you, Delegate Stein. It was your bill a couple years ago that put together the Healthy Soil Program, and working with you one-on-one, you working with my staff and developing that program. We've provided support for climate-smart research into climate-smart conservation practices. We've introduced the Cover Crop Plus program and the Healthy Soils Competitive Fund. These are two new pilot financial incentive programs. They look at more long-term practices that farmers can use, that we can provide assistance to, that they can put on their farms so that they can improve the soil health of their farms. And we've also, through the support of the Tree Solutions Now, which provides farmers with attractive incentives for planting and growing new trees. And this initiative helps Maryland as a whole meeting our greenhouse gas reduction targets. We want to ensure that our programs and services are available to all farmers. When I say all farmers, it's our large production farmers. We want to include our urban growers, our small acreage farms, and our historically underserved communities. The office has expanded our financial and technical services availability, and we've made conservation considerable efforts, to understand the challenges that the small urban farmers have. These challenges are very different than our larger traditional farms, and so we've made a real conscious effort going up into Baltimore City, going down in Prince George's County, going into these urban areas where individuals, where farmers who want to grow locally led or local food to their local communities. We need to understand the challenges that they have so that the programs that we deliver are going to work for them. We got to hear from them, and that's what we did. So in this past year, after much input from those urban agriculture communities, we launched a small farm and urban agricultural program. We introduced a cover crop cost share program for small farms. We developed regulations to implement the Urban Agriculture, Water, and Power Infrastructure Grant. I want to thank Delegate Boyce for her leadership, and I want to assure you that that program will be up and running come July 1. We've also spearheaded a pilot project that supports Baltimore City high school students who want to pursue a career in turfgrass management. Our overall aim is to provide all Maryland farmers with the support they need to meet water quality goals, embrace carbon-friendly farming practices, and to help build a resilient future for agriculture and food production. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And just one brief last thing, and that was to reiterate the importance of the MALF program, the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program. It's one of the oldest farm preservation programs in the country. 40 years old. We've been purchasing properties in 23 jurisdictions. And I'll just say very quickly three things. The first is it is a county-state partnership. So the state isn't just buying land. Farm owners who are interested in selling, or sometimes it's neighbors who are recommending that farms go into the program and bringing it up, it goes through a county process first to make sure that the county is okay with it, that it is contiguous or close to other properties, that you're creating an area that is preserved. Baltimore County has done a great job. Carroll County has done a great job. Many jurisdictions have prioritized this. And the whole purpose of it is to preserve productive agricultural land, but not to handcuff it, to allow those farmers to continue to do interesting things on their farm, but it's giving them a boost on one hand, and to trade on that, it's to ensure that that land perpetually is preserved from development. And that is the entire goal of it. The numbers are pretty incredible. Totals for calendar year 22, 422, that's a million, or is that 1,000?
That's million.
That's a big number. But that's how much of a public investment it is, but that is 78 easements, major farms that have now been preserved. And that's incredible, and that's what we love about this program, and hope that you continue to support it. And then briefly, just finally, come to that. MDA priorities, overall priorities, increase profitability of farms. If we can make sure that through our actions, through your actions, farmers have the tools they need to be profitable, and that includes doing new things on farms, reducing some of the regulations on farms, and finding ways to promote what they're doing on farms. If they can be profitable, they can be better stewards of the land, better stewards for the bay, the environment, the climate. We're going to focus a lot on soil health and promoting soil health, because the better that soil is, the more profitable and the cleaner and the healthier that land can be. And then finally, continue working in partnership with stakeholders to protect the bay. As I mentioned, we're unique among states in our geography and our relationship to the climate and to the environment. And with that, thank you very much for your time. We're happy to take questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And again, congratulations on your promotion to be the secretary. We've got the first question going to Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. Really glad to have you with us in our new role, and I look forward to working with you. I just wanted to touch base on pesticides a little bit. There's been obviously more and more science showing toxic effects of certain pesticides, and this committee in recent years has done some work on specific, a lot of work on specific pesticides, but I think the legislative whack-a-mole approach of one pesticide at a time is not really the most efficient way of handling this. Last session, I had a bill which would have moved pesticide authority to the Department of the Environment with Department of Agriculture, in consultation, as well as Department of Health. And, just trying to find the best way to do this. And I wondered if MDA has looked into how we can better balance human health and environmental health needs with the needs of agriculture in these situations.
Well, and Delegate Ruth, thank you very much for the question. So before I turn it over to the expert here, I will say that I'm going to focus on one word that you said, and that is balance. I have firsthand experience over the last number of years watching the spotted lanternfly come in, and the issue that we brought to this committee when chlorpyrifos was being banned was that not we love chlorpyrifos, it is a tool. We know that it works when we need it to work, and there's not another tool out there. Guess what? there's still not another tool out there. And so our vineyards are learning to live with this pest, and that's just one example. The product has been banned, but the farmers are left still wondering at that time, at that moment in time when the lanternfly is the worst, they're not allowed to spray anything else. And so the tools and the balance of trying to figure out what those are, that's really going to be the question going forward. I'll turn it over to Kevin Conroy, who has the real answer.
Thank you.
Delegate, I remember we had the bill last year. It was something that, I'll be honest, we caught us a little bit off guard. I can assure you, my pesticide regulation section are consummate professionals. They do their job well. It's a conversation I know we want to have going forward about, if that does, the state does want to make that happen. But, if there's ever a need about, you want to have a big holistic conversation about pesticides and how we monitor them, register them, how our team goes out and does inspections, we'd be happy to provide you any information possible. But, I can assure you, there were some insinuations about my staff not being a little too close to industry last year, but that is not the case whatsoever. They are, again, professionals. We have a small staff. I would love it if we had a few more people so I could have more inspectors in the field and, the new administration, perhaps a conversation we can have. But, yeah.
Thank you, and I just want to make it clear, in no way am I criticizing your staff
No, not at all,
or
yeah.
think that there's any problems with your staff. But, there are concerns, and it's not so much about the inspections as about identifying which pesticides might have toxic effects that we're not taking into account. And, I know that you have limited staff, that have the ability to do that, and we rely a lot on the EPA labeling.
Correct.
But the EPA is sometimes slow to act and sometimes subject to political headwinds, depending on, what the situation is. And so I just want to, I feel, I want to know, or I want to look into what we can do in Maryland to protect Maryland, human health and environmental health. And, frankly, we're seeing more impact on pollinators, which that goes back again to, if the pollinators collapse, that impacts our food system. So, it's definitely something I'm interested in having further conversation on. I'm not introducing a bill on it this session, but I think it's something we need to.
Be happy to have a conversation anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll point to something Kevin just said. We're happy to have that conversation. So I'm excited to be joining an administration that is happy to have conversations. And one of the directives that I was told and other cabinet members have been told is to be in this building answering your questions and bringing the agency along for letters of information, for pro and con testimony. So please understand that we would like to, and I've got some meetings set up, we want to be here and we want to talk, and that I think will be a breath of fresh air.
Wait, you mean you might be issuing opinions on legislation? Shocking.
Did I say that? No, that's true. That's true.
Okay, next question goes to Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for being here. I am certainly one of many who's excited to work with you and your team. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, to Delegate Ruth's point, I know last year the state chemists came up, and that was a touchy subject. I think the bigger question is, as it relates to the state chemists, is there a willingness for the state chemists to also work with other agencies as we collectively work together for the purpose of ag, and to your point, Secretary Addix, to kind of grow the profitability of farming in this state?
Absolutely. We work with the Health Department, Department of Environment all the time. We were actually on a call yesterday about the Pesticide Advisory Committee. We had the lab director from the Health Department there who we work with on a whole number of issues. We have great rapport with the other agencies on these. Yeah. And at our federal level too. We actually just had lunch the other day with some of the people from the Fort Meade EPA lab. We work with our federal partners and our state partners hand in hand all the time.
That's awesome to hear. My next question is about, and I could be wrong about this, so please correct me, about the federal definition of a farm and or a farmer as it relates to resources that can then come down to places like Prince George's County and Baltimore City. farm is defined one way at the federal level that doesn't necessarily allow sometimes the resources to get down to more of the urban agricultural realm. And so wondering about any work or partnerships to work on creating a more a holistic federal, hopefully definition that will help further, again, those resources, not only here in the state, but also in our urban agricultural areas.
Let me ask my team, is there anything in the works on that?
So we are working with, with our federal resources, but just to be clear also that we've designed, our programs for the small urban farms to be farms that are 10 acres or less. So as a way to start, and then those are the farms that are qualifying for our programs. But we are having ongoing conversation. There is some, as you said, I believe, some language that helps define what those small urban farms, the areas where they exist. But as I said earlier, we want to make sure that we're providing the services to all farmers. And so, identifying 10 acres or less, I think really kind of, at this point, really encompasses.
So less could be an acre?
Yes.
Half an acre?
Yes, there's no
1.5 acres.
minimum,
Okay.
yes.
Because, the other thing is that, vertical farming is starting to happen as well. And so I
Exactly.
can also do that in a smaller space. So I'm just checking.
Yeah, and I would also just add, too, that in the competitive program that we're introducing, we have introduced, the unique thing about the uniqueness of that program is that we're asking farmers to come to us with their ideas. As long as their ideas help to meet our objectives, that helps us and helps them, again, trying to provide those services. So it's not, something that's so or siloed that, you have to, we're only going to do this. We want to hear from the farmers on what their needs are. And as I said earlier, too, the challenges that urban farms have are far different, and there's a learning experience that on our end that we're trying to figure out. So we want to make these programs as broad as we can to help make sure that we're providing those services.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad in our city I see one of my favorite farmers in the back here, that we are certainly meeting those challenges. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, congratulations. It's good to see you, and looking forward to working with you and your team. Also, thanks to you and Hans for all the great work on soil health. I know that Maryland farmers have been historically leaders in that area, but thanks for the work that MDA has been doing to add further incentives, new practices to build on soil health. My question goes to the field positions that you said, the 53 field positions have been added. We've heard historically that to meet our watershed goals, that farmers have had a challenge in getting the technical assistance that they need to implement best management practices. Do you think these 53 new positions will go significantly toward filling that gap?
Yeah, so when we went through the WIP 3 process back in 2018, and for those of you who don't know what WIP 3 is, it's our plan to help meet our water quality goals that are developed by EPA. And so what we did during that process, we went around the state and met with all the the counties, the farming organizations within those counties to say, these are your goals within your counties. What can we do? How can we reach those goals? And it was through those conversations that we developed this WIP plan that was approved by EPA in the Chesapeake Bay program. So one of those things, one of the requirements or one of the resource needs was is in the plan is conservation planning. That's a huge needle mover to helping meet our goals. So conservation planning is going out, assessing the farm, assessing if they have resource concerns, providing them a plan, and providing them the resources they can to the projects that would work for their farms. So these 53 positions came out of that analysis to figure out what those needs are. We were granted those positions, and we have distributed those positions around the state. At the time, we had a backlog of projects that needed to to reference, that, farmers needed technical assistance, putting these positions out in the fields. I will say this, that it has been a challenge filling these positions as we went through COVID and the great resignation era and filling those positions. But we've made I think some great progress. And talking and analyzing each of the districts and each of the counties, what those needs are, and putting those positions in those offices to help meet those needs. So yes, long story is yes, I think those 53 positions will help us.
Great, thank you.
And Delegate, Mr. Chair, if I could just add
Sure.
one thing, thank you to my delegate, Delegate Stein. Appreciate that question. One thing I want to say that I didn't say further is this agency, much like many agencies in the state, needs to better reflect and represent the industry. And I'm talking about all levels and manner of diversity. And so as we make hires, that's going to be a priority. And we have many positions to fill, and it has to be a priority, because as we're moving into new markets and representing new farmers and, I'm talking language and everything else, all other forms of diversity, we have to be more representative, and that's a personal goal of mine as we staff up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here and bringing the team. It's always a pleasure to work with the Department of Ag, and good to see you be there now and
Thank you.
having a little history with you over the years. But, we've touched on two things. I think that there's a lot of new members in the committee. There's a couple of issues have been touched on to some detail. The spotted lanternfly and the blue catfish are both invasive species. They both have proliferated in this state beyond belief. And as you mentioned earlier, 7 years ago, we first identified the spotted lanternfly. I think it came in on some landscape stone from China, if I'm not mistaken, into Pennsylvania on a ship, I believe. And so I really wanted to have you or your staff talk about kind of how that proliferation over the short period of time in 7 years from where it started coming in on a stone, on landscape stone, to how large it's gotten in the East Coast now. And also with the blue catfish, which I think is going to be is one of the biggest problems in the Chesapeake Bay right now in destroying the bay, is this invasive species of blue catfish. And I'm glad to see that the department is working with USDA to get funding in to really help to move these products. I know we worked hard to get blue cats into the prison system. I wish we'd get them into the colleges and hospitals, anywhere that Maryland has any money involved, because we really need help in this processing end. But really to talk about, too, especially new members, how these invasive species have really caused so much havoc in the state in a very short period of time. And I know the balance of how to deal with it is difficult, but I think that for the sake of the new members, they need to understand how quick this thing got kind of out of control, if you will.
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. I'll just give a quick preamble and then turn it over to the expert assistant secretary here. With the spotted lanternfly, just for an example, I know we're going to have a catfish fry at some point. I wish we could have a spotted lanternfly quick fry, but I'm willing to do it. Right? Anything's better with chocolate or whatever. Right?
Well.
There was a place making them dip them in chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate and wine pairing. But in a case like that, the reason that invasive species are a problem is that the natural environment, there are no predators for this, and so it can grow and expand and wander, and that's what we've seen happen with both of these. With the spotted lanternfly, the difficulty is that we're learning by doing. We're learning as we go. We've had great expertise here. We've had great expertise from our friends to the north at Penn State who've done a lot of research, and they were the first ones to be researching this. And this is involving national level research and international to figure out, are we going to introduce a predator to try to take care of these things? Are we going to wait until the birds figure out that even though they have a red splash on their wings, they're actually not poisonous and they taste pretty good, right? Until then, we are having acres and acres of crops fail because of it, and the concern is always, again, back to Delegate Ruth's proposal about balance, trying to figure out what tools do we have, and we go. There's a grape grower conference happening right now, and I saw a slide, and there are lots of things that kill the spotted lanternfly. There are no things that kill the spotted lanternfly when you need to. Like when it's hurting that fruit, when it's on the grapevine near harvest, you just have to wait it out and then try to deal with it over the winter or catch it in the spring. But when they're at their worst, we don't have tools right now. And so that's one of the problems with it. Blue catfish, they're delicious, 110 million pounds in the bay. Let's go get them.
So, Delegate, to speak to a little bit of the history of it, we first identified about 7 years ago here in the state. Came in from PA, as you're correct. Came in on stone, a shipment from China into, I think, Port of Philadelphia. Like I said earlier, this unfortunately it spread so quickly because it is a phenomenal hitchhiker. We first identified it again in Cecil County. Our team has been out there mapping this since day one, and we have been able to track the movement of this along I-95, the major roads, and along the rail lines. We work with the trucking companies, the rail companies, a lot of education to their staffs about what to look for, making sure you're not transporting these. We will start up we still have an education campaign. We do social media. Our staff gets out there in the summertime for events. In the summertime, all the states actually, the way things have gone, there's a lot more press coverage of it as we get the warmer months come along and people start seeing it more, and as it is spread around the country. But actually, I was called the other day about this with USDA, and when they had their first detects out in Michigan and Indiana, and they discovered it right along the major roads. So luckily, they hadn't had established populations, but it clearly came from interstate commerce. This probably wasn't people just going on a road trip. This was coming on shipments. I believe one was right next to a trucking center. One was less than a mile from a rail line. So this is how it has been spreading. Our colleagues in other states, our National Association of State Departments of Agriculture has now made this a priority. We will actually be discussing this in a few weeks at our winter policy conference. But this is a priority now for not just us. A few years ago, our colleagues in the far south, the west, Mountain West, the plains couldn't care less about this. But now that it's starting to move into their neighborhood, everyone's waking up, and our national group is pushing this as a priority for USDA. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it's just a great hitchhiker, and they proliferate like crazy. Deputy Secretary Connolly lives in Cecil County, and he could tell you about his efforts to eradicate them and the constant battle that it's been for him for the last few years. But
Yeah, he had to buy new boots just to walk in his yard, I believe.
they're a nuisance.
But I just want the committee to understand, it's nationwide now. What happened, came in on a few landscape zones 7 years ago in
Right.
Pennsylvania is now really affecting the country.
Right. Actually, about 2 years ago, they found a dead one in Sonoma, California, and we immediately got a call from the California Department of Ag wanting to know what are you guys doing. Yeah, they have no idea how it actually got there, but all of a sudden it woke up our friends from the West Coast. This is something that wasn't on their radar. They didn't care about it, but again, this can decimate the grape industries, the stone fruit. Luckily it's not going after grain, but these are major industries that we have in the state, and we're doing our best to help make sure they're not going to lose their crop.
Well, some of my colleagues enjoy grapes a lot, and I just really want to make sure that we get these under control so they don't destroy the grape.
Well, we especially
Industry.
like the products that come from the grapes.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go that far, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, but now that you mention it, I've seen that.
Right.
But
Delegate Healy said grape jelly. I was thinking about that. Okay, are you good?
thank you very much.
Okay.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Next question goes to Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Addicks, congratulations on your appointment. We've appreciated your advocacy for many parts of agriculture for over the years, and especially the fruit of the vine, I think. And
Thank you.
and and you have a great staff and that you can work with, and very sincere and dedicated. I would like to point out that you had made some remarks about the Ag Land Preservation Program, and you're not buying the farm, you're buying an easement. And I think you clarified that some at the end, that we've had bills here before trying to change what you're restricting with that easement. But it is an important program, and we've supported it all along. So I thank you for your service and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification. When I said bought the farm, I thought that sounded bad anyway.
Next question goes to Delegate Love. If she's, she had to go speaker to speaker, so we will go to Delegate Ewing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome again.
Thank you.
Great to see you here, and very happy for all the work you've been doing up till now, and look forward to working with you. I wanted to circle back to the issue about a lot of the things that we're actually talking about, pesticides and invasive species, and I wondered if you have or you contemplate having a partnership with the University of Maryland system of the university system, where all the research that's being done, you mentioned, I think it was mentioned that Penn State has been doing a lot of research on the lanternfly. A few years ago, I went to a conference where they talked about pesticides, and some of the big manufacturers who we've sometimes been battling with really are looking forward to genetic engineering to do species-specific, some kind of treatment that won't affect any other species when they're dealing with, so that you don't have these residual problems of stuff going into the water system and damaging other creatures, including people. Do you have any kind of partnership like that in the works, or is there something already ongoing that we may not be aware of?
Well, I will say that we definitely have a great working relationship with the University of Maryland. I think as part of my role, I have a seat on if confirmed, we'll have a seat on the Board of Regents of the university. We work very closely as an agency with University Extension, which is getting information out, but also with their research teams. And Kevin, if you want to add.
Sure, we don't have any pesticide research contracts or anything like that with the university. But we do some work with some other universities on, say, resistance testing for mosquito products. We worked with Virginia Tech for a number of years, and now we're working with Cornell. And unfortunately, that's all funding-based, too. We used to get more money from the feds for that work, but that money's gotten to be a much smaller pot the last few years. But it's something, we want to be using the best products possible, making sure what we are using is effective on mosquito populations. So that is, money well spent. We really it's needed to be spent, but it's an evolving science. And again, if we had funding, we'd be happy to talk to our friends in the university if they even had the capacity to do that work for us. Penn State's lab is a little bit different. They have a much bigger pesticide research. Essentially, I think they've got a lot of money from the feds these last 6-7 years to do just the spotted lanternfly work. They had a large, I think, it was well north of $10 million grant, I believe they got to do that kind of work, since Pennsylvania was the epicenter for this.
Yeah.
So they've been spearheading that effort.
Okay, thank you. I just, in the future, maybe look for opportunities to do or to find a way. You don't necessarily have to fund it yourself. I mean, if you could help them find grants or funding from other sources, or partner with industry people, because it's a problem that if government does the research, then industry can develop the products to make it work sometimes. We've seen that at NIH, so I would think that it could be done with, the state university systems as well. My other question is about, again, the urban agriculture situation. And do you do any work with rain gardens, including like rooftop rain gardens, and helping, make sure that they're choosing effective plants and making it work and all that?
I would say more of that is probably done through cooperative extension. in trying to pick the selected species or varieties, or that. Baltimore City does have an extension agent in the city that farmers can go to for that type of services. Our main focus is more on environmental practices to help, and then for the urban ag is also trying to help provide them the resources. In some cases, it could be the materials to help offset some of the cost of the materials and so forth, to put some of these practices so they can get their farms up and running.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, the last question I have is, I apologize, I got here a little bit late. You may have addressed this, but in addition to crops, there's obviously animal farming as well, right? There's a lot of chickens and dairy cows and all kinds of things like that, and horses. And some of I know that in Prince George's County, for example, the clay soil is not really something that they can get money for to preserve that, because it doesn't really, it's not good for growing crops, but it's very helpful for what they do have, which is, for the horses and so forth. So did you address that today, or is that part of another presentation at another time?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we do help equine operations, providing them technical assistance to address, their own farm operations. So again, a lot of this is done through the soil conservation districts. Our staff can go out, walk the farm. If the issue is that it's clay soils, they can't grow a pasture, those technicians can help provide the expertise to help those operations find out what's going to be the best tool out there to help them get the pasture established, or what other resource concern they have on their farm. So it exists.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Mr. Secretary. And I wanted to say how much I appreciated your comments about farms needing to be profitable. The question I have may be completely crazy, but is there any thought to what could be done in terms of eradicating the ailanthus tree, which I believe is another invasive species that is host to the lanternfly? Would it help to encourage people to get rid of them, or to get rid of them on state highways, for example?
Good question. I will tell you that there's great research about that tree, and I know just from the vineyard side, from my experience there, that vineyards have been encouraged to eliminate that tree. It is a very tricky tree to eliminate.
Oh, yeah.
Because it comes up and it spreads and it creates its own grove, and the minute you cut it, it starts that grove, and you're playing whack-a-mole for years. But I'll turn that over.
Right, our team, my staff has been out there for the last few years doing this. That has been part of our education. We've had no funding for that, but we have encouraged homeowners, landowners to get rid of that tree as best possible. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Unfortunately, none of the USDA money that we have would cover that. We've had people inquire about that in the past, but yeah.
And it is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday, I made a mistake. I neglected to point out that we have a second farmer on our committee, and that's Delegate Ziegler. So so we've got two now, I think. Anybody else? Am I missing anyone? No. Okay. Next question goes to, what's that?
Honorary farmer.
Oh, well, and the vice chairman's nonprofit has an urban farm, so we got three. Okay, next question goes to Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, appreciate the presentation. Sure. Thank you for coming out today. You said a word that immediately sparked, or maybe it was one of your teams sparked my interest. I live in Middle River in Baltimore County. The word midges came up, so I immediately perked up when I heard that word. I just have two questions. One, to me, it seems like, having the opportunity to spend summer times with the midges, it seems like some summers are better than others, right? It seems up and down a little bit. So I'm curious if your team has any sense of what this year might look like with the midge population. And then my second question to that is, what role, if any, do you all know that the issues that we've been having at the backwater plant have contributed to sort of these like booms in the midge population there with kind of all the material that's been expelled into the back river and other areas there?
Sure. Well, as, last year we had we partnered with Baltimore County. The county executive was, and the council were great enough to, it was about a $1.6 million match. When we were able to match that last year. So we created a new pilot program, which it worked actually very well. We weren't sure how it was going to work, but we actually, a few years back, we did a pilot, another kind of pilot program where we had a barge pushing BTI, which is the pesticide that we use to the bottom of the back river. It was incredibly slow, expensive, and it was hard to track how well it worked. The company that actually does the spraying for us, does most of the spraying for us, whether it's spongy moth, used to be gypsy moth, and others, helicopter applicators, and Valent Bioscience, we're willing to do a pilot to see if it actually worked. So what we do now is we fly a helicopter very low over the back river, up grid pattern back and forth, and it has worked incredibly well, beyond our expectations. The midge populations, the larvae, are well below nuisance levels now. We used to get tons of complaints about it, just as everyone, I imagine, all your neighbors would reach out to the delegation. We hear from the county council, everybody else, but last summer, nobody was complaining. Everybody was incredibly happy. We plan on doing that again this year, funding, if we have the funding. We are also working with the county. We're drafting an MOU as we speak with Baltimore City, since they control the treatment plant, and the county for funding. Well, we are going to put the BTI directly into the treatment ponds. We did some sampling, and the midge larvae populations in the treatment ponds, the numbers were astronomical. So the way we look at it is now treating it at the source there before it gets into the back river is going to be by far the best bang for our buck. And we think, this based off we did one test, it worked incredibly well to knock down the population. As long as we can do that, it'll be much more cost effective, and hopefully we'll be able to start, I imagine this will be a multi-year process still, but to really control what's coming out of the plant and lower the nuisance levels in the back river itself and the surrounding areas. Okay. Yeah, but we are very optimistic that it'll work well. But yeah, right now I believe that I'm waiting to find out who the new director of the Public Works director is in Baltimore. They just left, so we're waiting to get from them and their council about our MOU with them to give us access to the property to do this now. But hopefully, when it gets warm, we'll be out there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Next question goes to Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Secretary, it certainly is good to have you here, and congratulations. My question, Mr. Chair, is in fact the question that Delegate Love wanted to ask because she had to depart. In your slide presentation, there is a slide relevant to the economic impact of the horse industry in Maryland. And she wanted you to expand upon that, if you could, that one slide presentation that you have in your about the horse industry.
Let me pull that back up. So I can tell you that I'm not the expert on horses. I've had some dabbling in the horse industry, and to tell you that as someone who does not have horses, I'm surprised every time I hear the number until you start talking with the industry and realizing that just the owners of horses alone, the economic impact of horse owners purchasing equipment and feed and maintaining, and just that alone, and then you start boarding horses, and then you start with riding lessons, and then you're training horses and breeding horses, and then you have horse activities and events, and of course, hallmark events like the Preakness. That economic impact is astronomical. It's an amazing number. I don't know if you have any
Well, I don't have the number in front
detail
of me.
to add, right?
But one fact that surprises people often is we have more horses per acre in Maryland than any other state in the nation. We're not that large of a state, but we have more horses per acre than any other state in the nation. As Kevin said, we have some hallmark events like the Preakness. We also have hallmark events like the International 5-Star at Fair Hill. which is one of the top-tier eventing events that's in the world. There's only 6 others in the rest of the world. We have one of those here in Maryland.
I appreciate your answer. In addition to that, the town of Upper Marlboro has the Equestrian Center, and me and a couple other state legislators were attempting to find methodologies to expand how that can be beneficial to the town. And Mr. Chair, I have a rhetorical question for State Delegate Regina Boyce. She mentioned the state chemist, and I was just wondering, Delegate Boyce, does a state chemist, in your opinion, have much expertise in the field of stoichiometry? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Addicks, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's so exciting to have a native Prince Georgian.
Yes.
Yes, as Secretary of Agriculture, and I believe you grew up in Bowie, is that correct? So that's, Mr. Chairman, for the record, two days in a row, 2 secretaries from Bowie, or with ties to Bowie, so,
Oh, there's a third out there.
okay,
We'll just leave it in suspense, but there's a third who spent a lot of time in Bowie.
okay, wow,
It's Bowie specifically. It's not
Okay.
Prince George's, it's Bowie.
okay, right, gotcha. Okay, okay. No, but I have a question, and I would be happy to continue this conversation offline because it's a little bit unusual. So in the northern part of Prince George's County, in my district, but Delegate Holmes' district borders it, and Delegate Healy's district is right nearby, is one of probably the largest farm in Prince George's County that does not get talked about, and one of the larger farms in the state of Maryland, and that is the U.S. Department of Agriculture's 6,000-plus acre property in Beltsville. We hear, I think, increasingly concerns about parts of that property really languishing, and what is the plan of the federal government long-term with all of that acreage and buildings that are in decline. So I would love to know, and I don't know, if you know about the history at the state level, or, the history, or going forward, what maybe are the opportunities for the State Department of Agriculture to work with USDA with the questions and concerns about the future of that property?
Well, I worked there during college for 3 years, so it's a great property, does a lot of great research, but I don't think we have any specific relationship with BARC to be able to answer. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, under Kevin's leadership, reach out to them and find out what's going on there and see if there's something, if there's some spot for us to be a player. I know the University of Maryland does do research there in cooperation because of its locality.
I will say that just as a native Prince Georgian, and having spent a lot of time driving around that area and even visiting the research facilities there, it would be tragic to have that fall out of open space and agriculture. So we'll talk with USDA and the government
Agreed.
and figure out.
And thank you. Thank you for being open to a discussion on that. Of
course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That appears to be it. Kevin, congratulations again. Very much look forward to working with you as a committee. And of course, you're one of our favorites, so so there we go.
Well, I appreciate that. Hope to continue that, and my team and I look forward to engaging and having conversations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much. That concludes the briefing with the Department of Agriculture. We're now going to have a briefing on the state of agriculture, and that's going to be brought to us by the Farm Bureau, the grain producers, Maryland Nursery Landscaping and Greenhouse Association. Why don't you guys all come up here, and I'm going to assume it's going to start with Jamie and the Maryland Farm Bureau. Of course.
If you want to say, if you want to start.
Okay, I'm happy to get started.
Please do.
Chairman, it's nice to be here today, and I wanted to say a special hello to Delegate Long and Delegate Morgan, who represent parts of Calvert County, which is where my home is. My husband and I have a farm in Prince Frederick. We raise livestock, sheep, goats, and cattle.
For the record, give us
Yes.
your name.
Jamie Terrell, excuse me.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm also District 3 Director for Maryland Farm Bureau, and I represent the Southern Maryland counties. There's 5 of them, Prince George's and Anne Arundel, including St. Mary's, Charles, and Calvert County. You're going to hear, I think, a lot from a lot of folks today. I'm going to start with some of the broader agricultural issues that are priority for Maryland Farm Bureau members. One of those is wildlife management, another is agriculture education, and then I'll close with agricultural preservation. Wildlife management is a critical issue, causes tens of thousands of dollars in lost revenue for farmers each year. We know that we have out of control deer populations, but it's also geese, especially the resident geese that live in the state, and bear in central and western Maryland. We support expanding the necessary measures to reduce crop damage. Additional programs are needed to allow farmers and landowners to harvest deer and other wildlife that are destroying their crop when they're destroying their crops. We ask for reimbursement to farmers. Delegate Love has a bill in for bear damage. Those types of programs are critically needed to help compensate farmers for their lost revenue. We also need to allow farmers to control deer populations on public lands that are being rented for agricultural purposes. And we urge the state to provide cost share funding to help deter crop damage. So these are things like fencing deer out of, especially highly valuable crops. The next point I wanted to address was agriculture education. Most Marylanders, myself included, don't grow up on farms, didn't grow up on farms, and so we really need to make sure that we're getting agriculture education into the school system. Everyone should have a basic understanding of where their food comes from and how it is grown. Students should be encouraged to pursue careers in agriculture, which extend far beyond our farm fields. These are highly skilled work, in most cases, very innovative jobs in mechanics, STEM careers, and research, just to name a few. We ask for increased efforts to educate the public about the importance of agriculture. This is something that the Maryland Department of Agriculture does well, and we support any efforts to increase their ability to do that. Kevin mentioned that agriculture is our #1 industry, commercial industry here in the state, and so I think that that would surprise most Marylanders. We want to make sure that's well known. In terms of funding for agriculture education, it really needs to be pre-K through 12. We see some agriculture education in our high schools. Middle school is a big gap especially, but it really needs to start right at the beginning. Funds should be used for program development and improvement, staff development, incorporating curriculums into the schools such as the CASE program, the Curriculum for Agriculture Science Education, and career and technology education. And then we need to make sure that the educators themselves are being compensated as 12-year employees because they're often putting in time in the evenings through the summers to work with these students, especially like the FFA advisors, for example. The last thing I want to talk about before you hear from some other folks is agricultural preservation. And I want to talk about this in a twofold manner. First is land preservation, and then the other is the economic viability of farms. We heard about the MALF program and how it dates back to the late 1970s. We were one of the first. And as a state, we can't afford to ease up on that investment of securing our farmland. We have to have that in order for there to be farmers for the future. We strongly encourage full funding for these programs, especially the MALF program, and that the payments for the programs be revised to reflect current market values. I think we all are feeling the pinch on the purses, and we need to make sure that farmers are being compensated at the appropriate level. Another component of agricultural preservation, I see it as economic. We've heard that the best way to preserve a farm is to make it profitable, and as someone who is raising a family on a farm, I think that's vitally important, that be able to continue for my children. There are several programs that help us do that. One of them is MARBIDCO. That's a nice acronym for a very long term, the Maryland Agriculture Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation. I believe I thought it all right.
Had to look that up,
Yes.
didn't you?
I have it written down. MARBIDCO is an excellent program, and you've helped us support the Next Gen program, which MARBIDCO helps young farmers, beginning farmers, acquire their farmland. So that's really important. We would like to see that continue. And also farm credit is an important resource for our farmers. And before I close, just want to plug the invitation next week for the Taste of Maryland Agriculture event at Maryland Live. That is on February 2nd. Please join us. There will be over 800 people come to this event, a lot of farmers, a great opportunity for you to see and taste what we grow in Maryland.
I'll take over. Chairman Barvey and the rest of the committee, thank you for having us today. My name is Justin Brendel. I am the president of the Maryland Grain Producers Association, and I also want to say a special hello to Delegate Ziegler, who represents me here. I got a couple of brief points that I'll hit on here. I am responsible for representing the grain growers in our state, and we grow corn, soybeans, wheat, barley, milo, anything that's grown on a big acre scale. So we're not going to be the urban people. We're not going to be the small acreage. We're going to be the large acreage people that have kind of a wingspan. And although our agriculture is really broad, I'm representing a very small number of people that are still involved in large production agriculture, which is we run on a tight margin. When I say wingspan and acreage, we're talking about 1.2 million acres is a close number of what we grow grain on in the state, and most of that grain represents $500 million in farm gate sales in the state, and most of that grain stays local. Most of our corn and soybeans are actually milled here and used here on the Delmarva Peninsula to feed chickens, as we're all aware. And what doesn't go to the Delmarva will stay within the region. We heard the avian influenza mentioned in Harrisonburg here recently. A lot of our corn goes south and stays close by to feed stuff that comes back to our region, which is kind of value added. So we get pegged as growing feed, not food, as grain producers, but it's an important part of the chain because you can't have the chickens and you can't have the cows without the grain. So we are an important part of that chain. We've heard very little bit about the economic conditions in the last couple of years that have really plagued us, and one of those things that we've heard about different products doubling in expense. For us, a lot of our products and our inputs that we use to grow our grain crops have actually gone up more than that. Fertilizer expenses, for instance, were just south of 300% increase in the last 2 years, while a lot of our commodity prices have only gone up 62%. And even though that's one input, our fertilizer is a large input, and the price increases don't necessarily cover our cost of production. In terms of this committee, I definitely want to hit on the fact that even though our inputs are going up and we have a tougher time trying to stay profitable on our acres, that we still continue to support our conservation practices. We still are big into cover crops. My family in particular has been no-tilling a lot of our acres for over 30 years, which is it's actually fairly common for our state to no-till that long. It may not be common in the country, but as was stated by some people before, we're all kind of on the cutting edge of conservation practices. And even though we kind of take a financial hit sometimes to try some of these conservation practices and implement them, we still end up doing them because at the end of the day, for me personally, the soil health direction that we're going in is very important. And I really, if I can never plow another field, it'll be too soon. So we've really stuck to that. Again, as far as this committee is concerned, that brings in a balance type of thing with pesticides. I can't no-till without pesticides. So just a quick aside there. talking about soil health for a minute, I guess we kind of think about a number when we talk about carbon. An acre of corn in a growing season can sequester up to 8 tons of carbon. And I kind of ran a number real quick. If I take just our corn acres and the number of years that we've been no-tilling, our farm by itself with only one crop has sequestered 120,000 tons of carbon. So that's a pretty big number, and we don't farm that many acres. We're not a full-time. I have another job because we just don't have enough acres in Howard County to make it full-time. In addition to, while I'm talking about Grain Producers Association, we have a sister organization, which is the Maryland Grain Producers Utilization Board, and that operates the checkoff program in the state, which takes a small percentage of all of the sales from all of our grain commodities and plows them into a fund. I mean, you're all probably familiar with the checkoff program. And those funds get centralized, and we have a board of farmers for the state, and we get to take those checkoff dollars and commit them to all kinds of different things, from research and development stuff at the University of Maryland to education. We were just talking about ag education. There's all kinds of different things. Some of them are state-based, some of them are individual county-based, where we're going into the schools and educating. And then we also do some market development things, especially for energy. Where ethanol is concerned, we have committed a tremendous amount of money into ethanol research and getting actually ethanol to the customers. We actually helped to fund a program where we're getting blender pumps added to specific gas stations in the state to try to get ethanol used more because of the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Because I guess I don't know if it's necessarily commonly known, but ethanol, using ethanol results in just a little over a 50% reduction in carbon emissions when compared to gasoline. One final thing I'll mention is the wildlife damage. As grain producers, that's probably one of the biggest things that we face on a statewide level. I don't care where you go in the state. You're going to have farmers complain about deer damage, and it's significant. I really wanted to bring a yield map with me that shows dark red all around the outside, which represents no yield or very little yield, and green in the middle, and then kind of extrapolate that into some numbers because they're very significant for us. But anything that can be done for wildlife damage, whether it's deer, bear, geese, hopefully not Leonard fly, I guess I got to throw that in there, would be wonderful. But at the end of the day, as a grain producer, my numbers are really going down as far as people that do what I do in the state. So as it's been mentioned before, when we're talking about land preservation, please think about farmer preservation as well with whatever you're doing. We have seen just a lack of numbers going, as the generations end. I don't know if my kids will farm or not. I really hope they will, but I want to be able to have them farm in a state where it's beneficial to do so, and they can make a living doing it. So that's all I have for right now. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's see. Move this over. Hey, good afternoon, Chairman, delegates. My name's Steve Black. I'm a former president of the Maryland Nursery Landscape and Greenhouse Association, and that's sort of how I've come to be talking to you this afternoon. What I really want to do is tell you about the nursery, landscape, and greenhouse industry in Maryland, where we are, where we're going. Let me start off by saying I'm an owner-operator of a wholesale production nursery in Frederick County. We grow bald and burlap trees and shrubs for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, principally on the East Coast, but our market actually goes all the way west to St. Louis and Chicago. The green industry in Maryland is incredibly diverse. You have production farms like mine, but also container producers, sod farms, greenhouses producing bedding plants. You've got the consumer-facing part of the industry with all of our local garden centers and retail nurseries. And then you have an enormous number of small, medium, and large firms that do landscape installation and maintenance work, and they are the ones that take care of the vast majority of Maryland's green industry. Anything in a built-up area that's a living plant is probably been installed by or taken care of by one of these firms.
As of last year, there are almost 300 production operations, plant production nurseries in Maryland, and then another 1,100 licensed plant dealers that sell those products in Maryland markets. Those farms that are involved utilize about 27,000 acres of Maryland's agricultural ground. As of 2018, now this is the last time we have good survey numbers because this survey doesn't occur every year. As of 2018, the green industry had estimated sales of about $1.5 billion and employed over 25,000 Marylanders. So that you have a sense of just what I'm talking about here, if you imagine when you walk outside this building, if there were windows in here, I'd tell you to look out the window, but you go outside this building, every living thing that you see that isn't a human or an animal, was installed by a landscaper. They were grown in an operation that's part of the Maryland nursery and greenhouse industry, and they are maintained by these landscaping firms I told you about. If you see an oak tree along a street anywhere in Annapolis, with very few exceptions, it did not come from an acorn that happened to fall right at that spot next to the road. So the pandemic has not been as hard on our industry as it has been a lot of them. We had a lot of people rediscovered their outdoor and indoor greenscapes. We had a lot of long-term gardeners return to gardening, take an interest in their landscapes, and we brought in a lot of rookie gardeners as a result of that, people who wanted to start growing things. And all of the marketing research and things like that that I pay attention to show that that trend is going to continue. Those people are going to stay involved in their green infrastructure. So the outlook is good for our industry. That is not to say we don't face challenges. The one that comes up all the time is labor availability and cost, right? I have a lot of tractors and a lot of machines and a lot of fancy ways of doing things, but I have to have human beings operate those things. Finding people to start, literally just finding people willing to work on a farm is hard. Being able to pay them a competitive wage is also very hard. Inflation, like everyone, but inflation has really thrown our industry a curveball. We have historically sticky pricing. People don't change their prices for plants very frequently. We're not a commodity. We get to set our own prices, but those prices are not terribly flexible. And when your input expenses go through the roof, it becomes really hard to keep everything in the black and not start using up the red ink. Every year, we also face unintended consequences from legislation enacted or proposed. So let me give you an example here. Minimum wage. So setting aside any debate about the wisdom of a minimum wage, the plan to implement Maryland's new minimum wage, to phase it in over a set of years, allowed all of the operations like mine to plan ahead. We knew what was going to happen with our labor budget going forward, and we could account for that with our pricing and planning for the future. If there were to be this fall a radical change, a speeding up in that, a sudden jump, unpredicted in the minimum wage, that would cause me to have to raise my prices at an atypical time of year in an unusually large way, and that problem with me increasing prices follows on to all of my customers, because any of them that have done bid work or bid jobs, suddenly the plants are not available at the price they planned on getting them, which could almost certainly drive them to look for cheaper plants elsewhere, i.e. not Maryland. So there may be strong demand for the plants we grow and the services of our industry, and we try to run our businesses in a dynamic way. But we're still limited by the life cycle of our crop. When I plant a tree in my farm, I expect to sit on that tree for 3 to 7 years before I can sell it. I try to be dynamic, but I cannot change my business plan or budgeting on the fly multiple times per year. So please recognize these long timelines for at least the nursery industry when you envision new legislations. be mindful of the idea of phasing it in to allow the businesses to adopt. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Far Nasir. I'm a chicken grower from Pocomoke, Maryland. Hello, Senator Delicado. I'm relatively new to chicken farming. I moved here from Connecticut about 10 years ago and came into the farming community, and this is where I'm staying. Hopefully, my kids would too. So I'm the immediate past president of Delmarva Chicken Association, and I am one of 23% of minority farmers in chicken farming. That's a diversity you don't find in all different forms of agriculture. In last year, chicken community faced a number of challenges that are going to continue this year. Last February, we had our first case of AI, and for broiler chickens, we got lucky. We only had 2 out of 1,300 farms affected, but that's 2 cases too many. Maryland Department of Ag did a great job in helping manage the situation. So we need to make sure that Department of Ag has all the resources available if it does come back, including people and funds. There's just one thing I would like to say is that in the control zone, in the AI, if the farmer doesn't get chicken, which they don't when the AI hits a farm, we don't get paid. So we still have all the expenses, but we don't make any money because there's no chickens. Inflation has been a big factor for us as in the chicken farming. Personally, my expenses have gone up 25%. Electricity has gone up 28%, and it's due to go up this year close to 30%. It is one of the reasons DCA is working with Farm Bureau to introduce a bill that would exempt the sale and use tax from supply of electricity, similar to what manufacturing and residential already have. I'm one of the lucky people that I got solar for my farm. It's actually just been 1 month, so I just got my bills today, and I'm excited about it. But that's one of the other things that I would like to bring to your attention is that a lot of bigger companies are bringing solar farms to rural Maryland, which is causing local farmers to basically have block grids where they cannot put solar for their own farms. So we are made to pay the electricity, and even though we have the room and we have the use, we still cannot put solar farm for ourselves. And even though we're talking about electrification would be good for some part of the Maryland, but I don't think it would help us. We need all sorts of energy that we could get, including propane and natural gas. Delmarva raises about 567 million chickens a year, and we try to do it in most sustainable and environmentally friendly way. And we are trying to decrease impact on the climate every year. That includes recycling manure for crops that could be used locally. Lastly, I would like, this is the 100-year anniversary for broiler chickens on the shore or broiler farming in anywhere. In 1923, Cecile Steele received 500 chickens instead of 50 to raise for eggs. She got too many, so she just raised them for 12 weeks and sold them to restaurant. That's how the chicken farming started. And she ended up ordering 1,000 the year after. I would like to invite you all for the kickoff event for 100-year celebration on February 11th at the Delaware Ag Museum. If you can't make it, we'll bring it to you on February 28th on Chicken Day in Annapolis. It would be at the Calvert House in the historic end. Thank you for your time, and happy to be here.
Assume then that leaves Richard Francis, also known as Farmer Chippy. Farmer Chippy, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I want to say thank you to the chair, vice chair, and all the delegates. Thank you for taking time out to listen to the story of the urban agriculture journey. I want to big up my delegate, Ampri, who was just here. He's my delegate. And of course, my roadie over there, Regina Boyce. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about urban agriculture, where we've come from and where we are now. Several years ago, I went on this journey to grow food on vacant lots in Baltimore. And as the years passed, no one was saying anything to me, so I kept growing food on vacant lots in Baltimore. And eventually, I ran into the Maryland Farm Bureau. Some of my colleagues are here. And once I got to the Maryland Farm Bureau, I realized the advantages that we had just by understanding what's happening and understanding the new policies. So I jumped in, like head first, quit my job, and decided to grow food on vacant lots. Then, of course, COVID hit. And I can tell you, it's been my experience that growing food on vacant lots in Baltimore is a successful mission. The problem we're having is that we haven't been able to popularize it, and a lot of people don't understand exactly what we do. So urban agriculture is not just growing food on vacant lots, it's also building communities and listening to those who were left out prior to COVID. If you have a chance, I invite every one of you to come to the Plantation Park Heights, which is in Park Heights, Baltimore, down the block from Pimlico Race Course, for those of you who come to the Preakness. During the Preakness, you're welcome to come check the farm out. And I want you to pay attention to the spirit and the essence of the farm, because I feel this could be replicated across Maryland, and it can really be a stepping stone and a vehicle for new and beginner farmers. So let's talk a little bit about the effects. When it comes to education, we are lacking any type of education at the elementary school level in Maryland. This is an opportunity for us to introduce urban agriculture at the elementary level, and I guarantee in 10 years we have super duper farmers here in Baltimore. That's just the education piece. The funding piece. Maryland Department of Agriculture, you did a great job. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hans. Yeah, they actually took their time, came down to Baltimore, spent some time, pull some fabric with me, listen to my stories. And they went back to the Maryland Department of Agriculture and created opportunities for those who were left out. So big kudos to those guys. I'm glad that Kevin kept them. Good job, Kevin. Yeah. So between the Maryland Department of Agriculture, who are now creating wonderful opportunities for urban agriculture through funding, which was one of the key issues we were facing in Baltimore, and the USDA's new programs around shoring up farmers, I think we have a good chance in Maryland to lead the way. In regards to tech support, we have University of Maryland Extension. If you don't know who they are, that's your homework for today. Amazing group of people. We are fortunate in Baltimore to have Nieth Little, who's an amazing lady. If you don't know her, try to know her. She's amazing, and she'll help your area as well. She's very efficient, and she understands the issues that we're having. She's been in it for a while. And NRCS is giving out these equip grants to build tunnels, and that was a real help for us. In the beginning, it was a little challenging, but as we rolled out the program, they realized that they had to front the money in order for those who cannot afford to be able to throw up their tunnels. So they give sort of like a little permission, I guess, where you can get half the money up front, build a tunnel, and then get a reimbursement. I think it's a good idea. I am asking you to go a step further and pay for the entire thing, because I think the production piece is the piece that we really need to concentrate on. And once you build a high tunnel for an urban farmer, he or she will produce. Right. Let's talk a little bit about the horticultural plan over at BCCC. Now, when you go to BCCC and you get certified in these different training programs, you're able to add value to who you are. So for our landscaping team, they were able to add $1 or $2 to their onboarding price. So this is one thing that they're doing, and I really appreciate that. I think anything that we can do within walking distance of the residents of Baltimore, I think we will get a good turnout. The issue is trying to bring my members from Baltimore to a training in another county, or even bring them up here to testify in Annapolis. It's a challenge. So we would prefer the current status, which is where University of Maryland come to our farm, put the training on, we bring the audience, and then we support them with tools from the university. That worked really well. It's still working. As I'm sitting here, my farm is distributing 300 fresh food boxes in collaboration with Common Market and the city of Baltimore to 300 plus residents in my neighborhood who are food deprived. So it works. I'm here. It's happening. It works. The partnerships. I want to talk a little bit about the partnerships. BASF is pivoting into the urban agriculture field. We have a rep right here with us. He's back there. That's Max. He came to us 2 years ago when we became top 10 in the Urban Ag Challenge. I mean, the Ag Innovation Challenge, Annual Ag Innovation Challenge. We came top 10 in the finals. And BASF came to us and asked us what we wanted. Well, we didn't know what we wanted. We thought we wanted this and that and the other. But fast forward to now, our needs are big. They're huge. I say that to say, stop putting $10,000 and $20,000 and $30,000 into urban agriculture, because they will remain urban gardens. If you want it to be an urban agriculture scene, we really need to put a budget aside and really talk about this. I don't need to preach to you about it. I'm sure Regina did that already. And I'm glad we have Kevin, because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. So it should be easier here. Also, there's an opportunity for us to include and involve various different funding sources. So for example, you might not believe this, but Rite Aid is actually in the urban agriculture game. Rite Aid is our largest funder. They gave us $250,000 over a period of 2 years in order for us to structure up and make this thing real. So we can find the money outside as long as you guys promise to match it. Also, Baltimore Community Foundation needs a mention here. They have been doing work really well in Baltimore, and I hardly see them being talked about or being advertised. I don't know if that's intentional, but Baltimore Community Foundation is a real asset to urban farmers in Baltimore. Also, some advantages. The advantages that we have now is because of COVID, a lot of the children stayed out of school, but we happen to have a school. All of a sudden, our urban farm became a school. Why? Because for the last 2.5, 3 years, the children have been wandering the alleyways after school, not knowing what to do. And because they're coming to the farm so often, we have decided to have an after-school outdoor programming session with them. It's been going on for 3 years, and now we're ready for the support that's necessary for us to make it official. We feel outdoor programming is the future. So with that said, again, I want to thank you guys, and I want to remind you that if we put enough funding and enough resources into urban agriculture, we will create an onboard pathway for those who were left out prior to COVID. Thanks again.
Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Farmer Chippy, I just want to say, love the work that you do. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your partnership with other urban farmers in the area in Baltimore. So thank you. And Mr. Nazir, I thank you for your testimony. Thank you for putting solar panels at your facility. One thing I do want to note is that agricultural buildings are excluded from the types of buildings that are required under last year's climate legislation from reducing their building emissions. So just wanted to point that out. You don't have to, under that law, you don't have to worry about, electrification, reducing your building emissions. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, with that, thank you very much. Obviously, we will see all of you throughout the 90-day session as we hear bills pertaining to agriculture. And again, thank you so much to the Farm Bureau, the grain producers, the green industries, Delmarva Chicken, and of course, Urban Agriculture and Farmer Chippy. Thank you so much. So we will require 5 minutes. Okay, so we'll be, I don't know if we're officially adjourned or, but we'll, okay, we're offline for 5 minutes and we'll be back then with 9 bills and 52 witnesses. See you soon.
Sorry.